I know.
All set?
Yeah.
All right, it is 7:34 on February 24th. I'd like to call the meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health to order. We had originally intended for a variance hearing in about 10 minutes, which we have asked to postpone. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yes. I talked to the engineer Monday to see if he did any revisions, and he said he just was really busy with a lot of projects and he didn't get a chance to make a revision. And I told him he can still come from the board and discuss the plans and the revisions, and they could probably grant it. But he said he didn't want to be disrespectful to the board because he just wasn't ready for it, wasn't prepared for it, and he didn't want to go from the board not being prepared.
All right.
So he said, you think about it. I directed him to contact Betsy, whatever his decision was, and he contacted Betsy today.
All right. Are you here for the hearing?
No, I'm just observing.
Oh, all right. I was going to say,
I took a class before trying to do this.
you got to be here, huh?
So many hours. I was like rental last night.
Right.
So it's
So making the rounds, okay. Well, you're welcome. What's your name?
I'm Lisa.
Lisa?
I'm in the nurse practitioner program at Regis.
Uh-huh,
So I'm in RN, but
I see.
yeah, I have to do, I take health center, I have to do some. So I'm jumping ahead and doing.
Are you a resident of Norfolk, or?
I used to live in Norfolk. I live in Mansfield now.
Simon.
My mother said it, yeah.
Well, you picked a good meeting.
Yeah.
It's not
I
going to
have some upcoming meetings at this week.
Well, we're going to move beyond the variance hearing then.
Well,
and talk-
I do have a question for you, though, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, on this particular design, because I've never really, I've been working with on-site septic variances for many years. And this is probably the first time I came with a well being this close to the leaching facility, which is only 60 feet. And I'm just wondering how the board,
What's there now? Is it a reconstruction, new construction?
it's a
Failed system?
It's a failed system, existing house. There's a tank with 2 pits. Our as-built show the 2 pits being over here, but apparently the engineers say, no, it's over here. So he's telling me it's existing at 33 feet, the wellhead, and he wants to propose it to be 60 feet.
Can that be verified? So we have records plans that say that's further away?
That's correct. And it's just a handwritten as-built.
How long ago was this?
Does he have a title, like a failed Title V inspection done?
No.
So I mean, that would locate this thing for real in the field. And how does he know it's failed?
I don't know, but knowing that the groundwater, the height that the groundwater is and these 2 pits,
Yeah.
I could see it probably being seen as failed because it's probably sitting in groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when this was installed?
Yes.
I mean, it's like ancient times or recent?
Oh, ancient.
No, it's gotta be ancient.
Ancient times. Well, pits were there, so it's probably from the 70s or so. I have a plan here. So I'm working with the engineer. I'm just trying to get him to do some water testing of the well. Just some really basic, like you would find on Title V, if the Title V inspector went there. And if the well is about from 50 feet or more, I should say from 100 to 50 feet, because usually they test for nitrates, coliform, just to get a feeling of if the well is contaminated by the SAS and leaching facility. So I asked him to do the same here, and he's kind of reluctant to it. I was saying it'd just be good to have that information for the board so he would feel comfortable. And also I was trying to get him to shrink his system, to move it farther away.
What's he using?
It's a pretty
Just a
tough well.
chambers?
Here's the as-built that we have on file.
Beautiful. The scale, too.
And I wonder if there's a date on the next page.
We'll turn it on at least.
Might be the next one. We have the well water tested in 1997. It shows the well to be in compliance.
Do you know how deep that well is?
No, I do not. There wasn't a well completion form.
So he's got them both over here, and he's got them completely the other side, huh?
Yeah. And there's a well here, which is 100 plus, and there's a well across the street. But the lot itself doesn't really support well, maybe if you put it up in that area there, but still, that might be very costly for the homeowner.
It sounds like there's a couple of questions you may want to get answered before.
Yeah. Well, that was part of it.
And that's the big thing. If it's failed, then, you know, he's closer, he's further away than it was, and he's helping everything else, well, that's, you know, that's not a bad thing, but he's putting it closer than it was.
No, actually, I don't think he's putting it closer.
Well, if it's over here, as you
Oh, I
said,
see. Okay.
but the pits are over here,
Yeah,
and
we
now he's
missed-
saying they're here, so.
This was a repair in 81? Or is this the repair we're talking about now? It says
No,
repair.
That was the repair in 81.
Oh, so this goes way back. Okay.
But that's what's going on in that particular one. And one of the
So-
reasons why he can't go before you, because of this particular plan, he's asking for groundwater distance variance, and also he's encroaching the well. You can't have both of those, the combination of variances for only two to act on it.
Mhm.
You know, you want to, and that's just a sneak preview of what that's all about. And here's my letter to him, which is kind of lengthy, like 16 pages. Going wrong with it, but a lot of that, it's technical stuff, and they'll be able to work it out, but the biggest thing was the
Setback.
encroachment to the groundwater and
Yeah.
setbacks to that well.
Okay.
That's what we respectively wanted just to back out and just come back.
And the strange, just showing with this as-built, the house, septic tank's over here. There's not even
Yeah.
room for it.
Yeah, and there's another as-built too. Might be-
And this is.
Yeah, flip that, yeah.
So where's the septic tank?
Well, that one's up there, so no, there's another street there.
I was always wondering if that's an addition. This garage, is that a garage?
No,
or-
that's a chicken coop.
Oh, is that a new chicken coop?
Yeah, that's a very old chicken coop. The whole
Is there a
thing
septic tank under that chicken coop?
It's all 2x4s, there's caged in, walls, there's a little chicken coop there, a little door between it.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions out there, so
Yeah.
it's really out there.
Is there maybe a D-box underneath the chicken coop?
With a grate on top?
But the engineer did tell me he actually felt that tank, he was there and actually saw that tank, so. Something
All right.
going on.
Betsy, we have some vouchers to sign?
Does someone who, do you want to make a motion to continue that to a day?
Well, we haven't opened the hearing, so if we don't open it, we haven't got to close it.
Probably, well, you've got 4 minutes, you should probably, you'll have to open it and then vote to continue.
All right. Okay, we'll do that in 4 minutes.
4
We
minutes.
we can sign some stuff in the meantime.
Do just a few.
Stuff in that file.
What do you mean?
For 7 Hanover, I think.
Oh.
I think
Sure.
that's everything.
So do you want the file?
Do you want me to hold on? You can hold on to it.
Okay, well, hold on. Is this water testing it?
It's just my copy of the plan.
been a while.
Well, it's coming up on 7:45. Why don't we, for the sake of closing the hearing, open it first? A variance hearing for 7 Hanover Street is called to order. Well,
Per the applicant's request, motion to continue the hearing for 7 Hanover Street until our next...
we need to make a time.
next scheduled hearing. We have no
Want to
clue.
do March 24th, that's a month from tonight.
Motion to
with me.
move the 7 Hanover Street septic hearing to March 24th.
At 7:45.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So the hearing has been postponed. Vouchers are signed. The next thing we're supposed to be signing is a contract.
We've got
Contracts.
We've got all three contracts.
Okay, so we have our sanitarian contract. Principal is Mark Oram. It looks a lot like I've seen in the past.
It's exactly the same. And that's effective July 1st,
Yeah.
June 30th, since we haven't met since July.
There's space in here for 3 signatures.
This one, Tom?
He's got a space to sign. One copy fills everything. So this, the third contract here is for engineering services. And notice, Tom, you signed this in December of 2013.
Yes, over enthusiastically, I believe.
But others have signed it since then.
Excellent.
So we're kind of the last to apply our signatures to this document. So I'm certainly prepared to do that. Others are. Signing here is the last page. I'll just move on top. Just goes to the back. Okay, I think we got everything signed. I think you signed it already, didn't you?
Yep, I did.
Tom, I just have a set of minutes for you to sign. Cheryl wasn't there that meeting, June 3rd. I'll have you sign.
All right. Number 3 on the agenda, continued discussion of the Norfolk draft on-site sewage disposal regulations.
Yes.
The never-ending saga. We have some comments?
We do, and I actually did make a copy. They're in your packet, so I think Wade had provided a synopsis of the comments that we received.
Wade, do you want to
Sure.
synopsize your synopsis?
Sure. We received, last time we met, back it was in August, we decided to go out for public comments. And so we had draft prepared and ready for anybody who wanted to review it. We did get comments from one engineer, one resident in town, which is also on a conservation commission, and then one construction company that does a lot of work on on-site septic installation and Title V inspections. And and John Glosser was the engineer, and he suggested that maximum groundwater begin in the winter season, possibly in the month of January and February. Because his thoughts were that the season seems to be growing further into the fall, and the leaves and the plants are still growing, so the groundwater is still being affected by the live vegetation. That was his recommendation. Mr. Whittleton had one suggestion, pretty much like the Conservation Department has in their regulations, that each professional stamp would be affixed on the plans as a wet stamp with a signature on each plan. They have a wet stamp and then they sign it for their showing their discipline. Their new regulations that you have before you also contain that, so that's kind of like a duplication, but still it was a suggestion that came into the office. And then the contractor would be Big Corporation, and they had a couple of recommendations. One was regarding the plastic units that they're now designing. This particular person suggesting that that you're required to put stone underneath it for integrity. Also, he personally states that he observed failure rates because of the plastic units without the stone underneath it. The only concerns I have with that recommendation, even though it's a good recommendation, a lot of the plastic units, if you add aggregate to it, it affects the gallons per day or the quality of this discharge. And some of the units, the state will say if you use any aggregate around the system, then it has to be designed as a Title V conventional system, and you don't get the advantage of using the plastic units. So I'm not sure that the board would want to walk that route, because then you're dealing with design qualifications.
And no, all the plastic units have the approval letter by DEP, and all those approval letters always reference the installer's manual as far as how you install them. And this isn't a typical way to install it per those installer manuals. Plus, like you had said, if some of these are allowed to put right in the trench on the existing ground that's scarified, and what she's doing really is almost constructing a quote and fill, which, like you say, kind of gets rid of the Title V. You're gonna have to dig a whole area out. So, I mean, I wouldn't be advised to go with this one, since it goes either against or not, doesn't mirror exactly what the manufacturer suggests for installation.
And the state also, and the state with their design requirements. But the second recommendation that the company had, big corporation, they were suggesting to omit the generator transfer switch from the regulations. And they said, they recommended that it'd be more practical to have a generator switch for the whole house during construction of the building, and not have this generator through the Board of Health regulations. Because as the individual was stating, is that the generator is only limited to the operation of the septic system. And so the people, or the contractors that put it in, will only put it size enough just for that one fuse. And so the homeowners will only use it for the septic system. And it just seems to be very expensive and a burden to the town, a burden for the homeowners just to have a generator switch for one circuit or one use. And then the last question he had was more of a question, was that dealing with logic, he said if, regarding the reason for a generator switch for homes that are dependent on well water, he says, logic follows if the electricity is lost for these homes, so will the ability to use the water source, and therefore the toilet will not be able to function. So why the generator hooked up to the sewer pipe, or the sewer pump?
So why are we assuming that this home is going to have a well? Why couldn't it be on town water?
Well, if it's on town water, it's a different situation, but there are a lot of homes in Norfolk that are on private wells. And the logic goes, if they don't have electricity, their well water can't be pumped, it won't be generated, there won't be any pressure into the house, and their toilet won't work.
Okay, so in other words, subdivide the requirements and make them different for if you're on town water versus if you're on a well, in terms of not requiring this if you're on a well, because you couldn't have the water to make the system
Work.
needed.
Correct.
Okay. So sort of a customized, of course, well, yeah.
And people,
Except you know what, then what happens later on if you hook up with town water? You've got no control at that point.
I've been toying around with these regulations for quite a few years, and I've usually brought it out to the field. I'm out there doing parks with people, and I was at one site on Mass Ave. It was an unusual day because even a police officer stopped and came over and talked to us. It was just an unusual day. We had quite a bit of people around this test hole. The parks were very long, and we were there all day. So I brought up the topic of the generator switch and how everybody felt, because everybody was a town resident. And everybody in that crowd supported the generator switch. And they were telling me how much the electricity in Norfolk shuts off in some parts of the town, and they actually need a generator switch to keep their septic going and parts of the house going. I thought that was kind of interesting, because I wasn't expecting a positive result.
Can we have one switch, I mean, so you leave it up to the homeowner whether they want to have a switch just for this device versus, hey, go to 7,000 kilowatt.
Correct.
Whatever, and just get one for the whole house.
Correct. When I go there, I used to look for a power supply to the alarm and a generator. That's the minimum. If you want to upgrade it and make it to like 4 or 5 or 6 different fuses for their home, and if you get a big enough generator that can supply the whole house, that's fine too. It's up to the homeowner.
Wait, in your experience, how is this done in other towns?
I think our predecessor placed it into the regulation, and wherever town he worked in, you probably would find this regulation. It's a regulation he came up with and had towns adopt it. And I think that's the only town I've ever seen request of a generator. Other than if you're dealing with a shared system, you require a generator. And if you're dealing with a building with medical people inside, like patients, and they're overnight patients, the state would require a backup generator.
So, one of the things he says is the pump chambers are sized to have the backup storage capacity. It's only 24 hours, isn't it?
It's true, yeah, you have a minimum of a day storage.
Right, so if that happens on a Friday, you still, unless you can get someone out there right away, 24 is not a whole lot of time in an emergency situation.
No, but you have to understand, though, you're also warned by it, because you have an alarm system. It goes off, it's audio and visual, and it goes off, and you figure out something's going on, so of course you turn off the sinks and stuff and tell people not to take
No,
showers.
I'm saying if the power goes out for a couple of days,
Oh, I see.
you know what I mean? So he's saying, well, you should be able to get someone out there to get fixed or whatever. 24 hours isn't a long period of time if you had an emergency. I think the whole idea of this is an emergency situation. You've lost power for a couple of days.
And not many people think about it that way either. How much do I have in my tank? How much volume do I
No,
have in my tank?
no one's ever going to think about it. That's the point. Most of these people aren't going to realize they're going to keep using, if they can. If they're on town water, they can keep using, and not even going to think twice about it.
That's
If it
correct.
happens that you're out of power, or electric companies can't get out there a few days, if you have an ice storm, you're not going to think twice about it until it backs up into your house.
And that's, I was gonna say, yeah, and the consequences are severe. You get
Right.
sewage back up into the house. The lowest fixture ends up being flooded with sewage, either a wash machine or,
$800, over the length of time you have it and the peace of mind it gives, I don't think this one should be touched, to tell you the truth, my opinion.
now, these aren't recommendations from PSC, though. They're not our recommendations. These are recommendations that
No,
came
from
into
bid.
the office. Okay.
Right.
And I compliment each of the entities that brought it in, because it was nice hearing some feedback.
Well, it is, and in fact, I was thinking of, actually, Tom, do you have any reactions to the?
Well,
voice that PRG just
I
raised?
certainly, although it sounds like Wade's inspection process allows it anyway, but certainly I think I see no problem with a homeowner having the choice as to having a dedicated switch or having one for the entire house.
Right.
I mean, my experience is that in houses or developments where there are a lot of pumped systems, people voluntarily go onto the whole house, and it's kind of becomes a sale feature, so,
Yep, yep. And as the weather gets crazier, the chances of using it are greater and greater, so. We haven't had a really long blackout here in quite a while. I'm remembering a May.
Couple of years, 3 years ago, was it?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long was that?
It's like 5 days.
5 days, yeah.
Was it? Was it that long?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've had a generator, right?
We had,
No, you know what the
One
difference
generator.
was? The original one that I'm thinking of, which was back to like '78, town water, and therefore no water and no heat or no anything. But it was actually in May, so the heat wasn't so much of a problem as just a lack of water.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
But, yeah, that's true. The one we had more recently, we had heat, I had a wood-burning stove, and we had water, town water, and it was gas water heater. So we had hot water. So, man,
Rub it in. Rub it in.
that's why it's still
So you want to base it on you? Just come
Which is
see
why I
Tom.
just forgot the whole thing.
Well, I remember 3 years ago, this town was pretty much known because the superintendent opened up her school for people to come in to
Yep.
use their kitchen and stuff. It was the first town in Massachusetts, and from her example, other towns started following suit, and I thought that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
It was really nice of her to think of that.
All right, so either a whole house generator or one just for the system.
The last one I saw, the guy did 8 different circuits.
And those are all controlled by their own circuits, so there's no chance that one's going to trip and turn off the emergency generator for the
Wait,
second
I'm
one.
not an expert. The way it is, you turn off, well, the box itself has a switch that you turn off electricity coming from the outside, so now it's all internal.
Right.
And on that, you have certain fuses you can turn on when the generator's on, and you can turn off.
Right,
So
so
if
they're
you-
all separately fused, one's short, so one's not gonna pop and not turn them all off or something like that.
That I don't know, I'm not sure. if
I'm
you're-
not sure either. I would imagine that would be the way it should be, but,
Yeah.
I mean, is it need to be a dedicated one? Or does it have the ability to run other ones and
Oh,
not, you know?
You just have to be able to supply electricity to the alarm and a pump.
But like I was saying, if we're looking at the whole house one, you know, as long as the whole house one can work with dedicated circuits
Oh, yeah.
and not one tripping, shutting them all off. Because then if you had your refrigerator trip the circuit because you put too many amps on it and it shut
Oh.
everything off.
I was talking to one homeowner where they could just turn them off and turn them on. You can do, I mean, like, say you had a small generator, you didn't have enough money to buy like huge wattage for your whole house, you can only buy like a 3,500 watt. You could play with turn on your refrigerator for a couple hours, turn it off. When you hear the alarm go on, you run
See,
it down.
that's the one,
And then you can turn
that
that
would
one
make
off
me
because you've got a whole
nervous.
day, and then you can turn something else on.
That would make me more nervous as the one that's not dedicated, that you gotta flip on and off automatically to make it work the sewer or the pump, you know. Those are the ones that tend to get troubles. I think the idea of this idea was to be standalone, it's forgotten about. You don't have to worry about it all. You don't have to turn switches on and off. You don't run that ability of leaving a switch off by mistake or something like that. Or someone who knows what they're doing, leaving it off, and the other person who's in the house not knowing how to turn it back on.
Well, you can do that with the pump itself. I mean, the alarm box itself, you could turn off the pump, you can turn on the pump manual, it could be automatic, it could be off. I mean, that whole box, if you have someone who's not really mechanically inclined, can turn off everything.
You'd hope the typical homeowner would just leave all the switches in the up
Right, so that's the
position.
idea, I think.
Why would they be
If you have a
fiddling down
generator,
there?
if you have a generator that's hooked up to that automatically
Yeah.
kicks on when it does it, that's the idea.
Uh-huh.
You don't touch anything. But if
I
you got
remember-
ones that run your refrigerator sometimes, it also plugs into your alarm for your pump, that's when you're gonna get problems.
I saw one, I got a complaint, the system wasn't working, went down in the basement, it was like little dynamite sticks, those fuses, it was really.
Oh, yeah.
One of them it was corroded, and that was the reason the fuse went, so.
Yeah, that is also an issue that I've encountered, that some communities require not even sure of the terminology, but the type of generator transfer switch that automatically turns things on and off, so you can't surcharge the generator if the power comes back on and that type of thing. Because it is an issue, for example, if you have a residence that's occupied by a person who's doesn't have the physical strength or whatever to go down cellar and start flipping switches and that type of thing. You want it just to be automatic, where it switches and switches back without somebody having to go to a remote location and do something.
Well, maybe we need to make that a part of our regulation, that this is not something that requires fiddling. In fact, somehow discourages fiddling. This is kind of getting to your point. So that it comes on
Dedicated.
when power goes off.
Now you're narrowing it down, and you could probably get people,
Not foolproof,
Listen.
but it comes on automatically.
yeah.
More
they-
expensive.
They have some boxes where the generator's plugged right into the fuse box itself. It's an external box. Myers has a really nice box, and it hooks right into your box itself, and it feeds right into right into the pump system. That's like a generator supplying or supporting the pump alone, because it won't go back into the house. I mean, they do have them there. But I always thought it was more bang for your buck for the homeowner. As I said earlier, it makes your house worth more if you're able to support your home through an external generator. I mean, myself, I'd find that as being a plus for looking at a house.
But aren't those things automatic as well?
No, the generators aren't automatic. You have to pull them out of the garage or the back
No, you're
shed.
talking about the mounted one
Well,
on a.
I've seen them, they look like
Yeah.
an air conditioning unit outside,
Yeah.
but they're a generator.
You have a propane run and it's automatic, it's fed
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
house,
you have-
so if it does go off, it does kick on automatically, that's
Oh, you mean those huge ones?
not huge,
Well,
they're not
like-
big.
Like 7 kW, they're in that range.
It's like an AC compressor, like, size,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Wow, that's,
Yeah, it's not the kind you have on wheels, that you take in, wheel back in, wheel back out, plug in, that kind of thing.
I mean, a permanently one on a concrete block,
Yeah, like that.
something like someone would have.
Howard
like-
makes them and a bunch of other folks
Yeah.
do.
I've seen it once, but the person living in the house had like an iron lung, so if he lost electricity, it was life and death, and it would kick on and stuff, but
See, that's the one I was referring to.
It's almost
So
like a-
So you can actually use the one where you just plug in you wheel it out on the wheels and you plug it into your pump, you can do that?
Yeah, that's basically what people put in. I think that's your typical, it's an external plug, and you just plug in your generator, and it generates outside externally because carbon monoxide will be going inside your house. Yeah, it's just an outside small generator, a 3,500 watt would supply it. A couple $100, nothing exciting.
Well, it sounds like there's a substantial range of costs, both for the switching apparatus and the generator itself, and maybe we want to preserve some flexibility. I mean, if you have a physically fit person who has a house and doesn't mind wheeling a generator around, maybe that's something we want to allow as an option, as opposed to having it be done only one way, which is a pad mounted with a centralized transfer switch. I don't know.
That sounds it sounds like going into thousands,
Oh, yeah.
5,000,
Probably
6,000.
10,000, something like that. Easy 5.
In which case, the $800 looks good just to leave it here.
Yeah. That'd probably be more expensive than the pump itself, external pump itself.
If somebody does do the high-end system, both with the transfer switch and a high-end generator, there's no reason that could not be used to run the septic system, I would think, so.
Right, you could add something in to say this obviously isn't required if that type of
Yeah,
system's in place.
Well, it would take the place, if you have, yeah. it
Right,
would-
but just to clarify, obviously you wouldn't need to have that on there if that's.
Oh, of course not, no, because your house is already hooked up
Right.
through.
So with your current language, we do have the capacity to have some flexibility, right? Is that what?
Yes, yes.
All right. I think,
The current language is you need to be able to supply a portable generator to support the alarm in the electrical pump system, the electrical alarm and pump system for the septic system. Not word to word, but it
You
means.
just gotta change it to some type of secondary system.
But I think if you required one
well,
of those
that would be
Cadillac
included
systems.
within a larger system if somebody
As long
wanted
as
to
it
go
is
with the whole house.
There's a secondary electrical supply available to it, would include portable and pad.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, yeah, that would, I couldn't see anybody argue with that one.
Yeah.
With the portable generators, are people exercising? I mean, they should.
I'm not looking for a generator, it's the ability to have a generator in it, to plug it in it. I mean, the regulation doesn't go as far as
You don't have to own one.
purchasing a generator, that's right. I'm not looking for a generator, I'm just looking for the plug for the generator to supply the pump and alarm.
I do have a question about John Gloss's argument around the idea of pushing our time back. Because it's certainly true that, well, it's hard to think about mild winters this year, but it's certainly been mild early winters and mild late falls, so the biological, processes out in the woods have been going full strength right through November. Our deadline or our start date right now for observations is
December 15th.
December 15th.
It's right in the middle. I mean, I think we've had a few years, maybe you could argue that, but I don't think it's enough of a subset really to make a broad stroke and say that our winters are now starting later. December 15th is right in the middle between November and January. I mean, we already moved that. We just recently moved that.
You did for 1 year, yes, you moved it for 1 year. I'm not sure if it's continuous, but you did move it for last year.
That was just last year to the 15th.
2 years ago,
right?
yeah, 2 Decembers ago.
Well, as part of our regulations, is there comfort with the 15th of December continuing?
How's it been working?
Fine, fine. I mean, the town isn't high demand for development right now, new development, but so far, it seems to work. Also, you have modeling too, the determination of high groundwater.
There's always that.
So that's a backup. In fact, the state code allows modeling year-round.
Right.
And if you don't find modeling, then they say go for high groundwater season. You could even consider that too.
All right, so we'll stick with the
Or
15th then. And for Weddleton's ideas around the,
But let's go back to the groundwater now. The town ends May 29th. And that's, I think, personally, that's going into.
Too far.
Yeah, going too far.
oh, yeah, I mean, leaves are out by the 1st of May.
Yes.
For Cynthia Budding.
It is May 29th. And then there's,
Really?
yeah.
I think it was that way.
Yeah, that's pretty late.
That's why I've been trying to keep it to the first week of May.
Yeah.
And
of
then
April,
after,
right?
just trying to
May
encourage
1st.
people, or just keep the scheduling so it fills up to the end of April.
First.
Should be May
May
1st. And now is that, now we squished it a little bit on one side, and now we're squishing it on the other side.
Yeah.
We're taking too much of a
Well-
bite out.
You still
No,
got
it's-
January, February, March.
I mean,
You still got 5.5 months.
Yeah.
I mean, the proposal said December 1st for the beginning of the season. But if you went December 15th, that's fine too. I mean, that's fine. I mean, right now, I'm sure groundwater is lower because all the precipitation's above ground. It's all in snow.
Just wait a few weeks.
Yeah, but in a few weeks, it's gonna rise a couple of feet. It's gonna get up there.
So what we say, May 1st, is that what?
I think May 1st, yeah. I mean, that's where our climate is now.
Yeah. I think that's wise.
Okay. So these were good suggestions.
Yeah, they are. I was happy to see it.
So, we'll make a couple of date changes, otherwise not a lot of changes required based upon the comments that we got. And,
So you're looking favorable for this then? Is that what I'm-
well,
Of what? For the comments?
Of the regulations, is that what I'm
The
hearing?
comments or your
well, the comments
regulations?
and other regulations themselves. I mean, unless
Most of the
folks have
comments can
some
be tossed
other
out.
things they want to talk about.
So of these, I think the substantial change is going to be that we're going to have language that encompasses either the whole house solution or the dedicated solution with respect to the transfer switch. Is that?
Yeah, let me see how the regulations, okay, here it is. The pump electrical system shall be equipped with a transfer switch to allow connection to a portable generator.
Or other secondary
I'd
source of
strike the word
electricity.
portable.
Portable, yeah.
Just
A
strike the
generator
word
is-
portable,
Right,
yeah.
you haven't got to wheel it in, it can be there all the time.
Okay, so we can strike out portable. Okay.
I think that does it.
Yeah.
That covers anything.
Okay.
Okay.
What about this issue that John Weddleton raised?
John, it's actually it's a good recommendation. A lot of towns do it. So it just shows that the professional who's taking responsibility of the plans is aware of each sheet that's going in. And as he stamps it and signs it, he or she should be looking at it and they're saying, yep, I agree with this work. This is what I'm putting in. So
Tom,
you-
didn't they recently allow the use of electronic signatures?
Yeah, I was going to not even mention that, but
'Cause I know you can do that.
there is nothing like a wet stamp for.
But that
I
was
mean-
recent to get in line with the 21st century, I think.
Yeah,
Everyone
well,
doing
I
everything
mean,
electronic
you
now.
know, the electronic signature, you're supposed to have this verification system. You just can't
Right.
do it electronically, but rather than get into all that, if we simply had wet stamps, it's probably fine. I don't think too many of the engineers that we deal with are high-tech and have that type of capability anyway. They probably just sign their drawings. It's fine.
Yeah, on our regulation proposal says on page 2, on the section general procedures for obtaining a disposal system construction permit, section 3, second sentence, it goes, in addition to the application form and fee, plans bearing the original stamps and signatures of the design professional and professional land surveyor shall be submitted as follows. And then it goes, new construction, 4 copies, and it deals with, let me see, page 3. And it goes down with the different
So it's really already in
repair for 4 copies. It deals with repairs and how many copies the town would require.
So it's already included, pretty much.
Oh, change it to 5?
Yeah, just because I usually have to send a copy up to the DPW.
Okay. No, not at all. This is why it's here. Okay, 5. Okay. But it doesn't say, it says original stamps and signatures, so I'm assuming original would probably be like a wet stamp.
That's it.
He's got to do
Right, I mean,
each of the 5 copies.
so that's good for fraudulent, people being fraudulent with other people's stamps. What I've seen in the past is people would take another person's stamp and cut it out and paste it and copy it. And I've approached.
You've actually found that?
It was common. It wasn't as, it was common. I brought it to the town I worked in. I brought it to the Board of Health during public meetings with the person there still debating it, that it was the other individual stamp. And the Board of Health was actually started getting mad at me because I was being kind of a pain in the butt. So I suggested, let's have the engineer come in. And the engineer did come in the next meeting and said, no, that's not my work. So it was fraudulent work. So that's where I think a lot of the original stamps, what ink and what signatures and what stamps come in to make sure that it protects the professional who's stamping the plan.
Okay.
And when you're going back to digital copying of signatures, that's, I don't know.
But usually you can see with the original, and you can make copies of it, as long as there's one original there, you know?
Typical, but that's not what your regulations state, though.
Right. And that's
So-
typical, you see that a lot, and mostly because there was a lot of drawing sets out there. And this might not be for single-family house things.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You usually see a large drawing set, you don't get everyone stamping and signing every single page of a 50-set submission.
Yeah, but your regulations would require that. So that's something, it's not like this is a large municipality where you get huge subdivisions coming or
Right.
large corporations coming in, but it's still your regulations.
Well, John's proposal said to each and every plan submitted, not to each and every page submitted.
Correct, but your regulations as proposed says every page.
Yeah,
The,
I'd interpret John's comment to mean every page.
It's already in there.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Stop beating this dead horse.
No, but it's important if the person who has to stamp 15 pages, and then it gets a revision, and he has to do it again and again and again, and he has a large operation, and he probably doesn't.
well, most, at least to the septic plans,
Yeah,
or
septic's
only a
different.
few
We got two plans,
sheets,
two
yeah.
sheets. So that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
If you got a large submittal, that's a little overkill. You know, you've got your original set on one. It's not like you're saying, you're coming in, you've got one that's clearly copied, and it's all you're showing. You've got one set with the originals, and people make copies of them, submit sets, you know, and usually you submit an original and copies, so.
Yeah, if that's how you'd like to see it, we can always revise it that way. Have one
The
original.
way it's spelled out now,
It's fine?
it's fine,
Okay.
in my opinion. I mean, I think it's getting a little bit, you're getting a little bit worried because what happened recently with that whole
Yeah.
fiasco.
Yeah, I mean, that went from 1 original to 0 originals.
Right, that's
So
exactly.
there's a big difference.
Right,
between
so I think
0
it's just
and
getting a
1.
little bit reactionary to what happened.
Yeah, we only 75.
And now you're making this such a minutia, getting into it and.
But this happened a decade ago in another town.
Right,
and
but
it
it's
was-
few and I mean, when's the last time it happened in Norfolk that we know of?
That we know of,
Right,
right?
but I'm saying, if you have an original in front of you and the copies of that original, you can see the wet stamp and the original signature. And then you have copies of the same exact plan, you understand that that gentleman is approving this plan. That's not one thing if
I
you get
agree.
all electronics in, that's a little different. You know, then you might, raise a red flag, but.
Fred Frischner was the engineer I brought in and showed it to him. He was a
Oh,
hard
he
guy.
was?
He was a hard guy to get into the office because he didn't,
The hard guy in general.
Yeah, and so I told him, I'll have it in the conference room down the hallway. I'll have all the plans laid out, and you can go there and take a look. So we met him there. He looked down and goes, I did that one. He goes, I didn't do that one, that one, that one, that one.
That's why one guy would want to get the bad side of it.
Because he said when he signs it, he does something to each signature.
Okay,
So
so we
we
got to make a decision here. Are we going for 1 original with stamp and signature of whatever the plan is? At
Can you
least
read it
one?
right now, what it says?
Sure. It says, in addition to the application form and fee, plans bearing the original stamps and signatures of the design professional and professional land surveyor shall be submit as follows. New construction, 5 copies. Repair, 5 copies.
Honestly, I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's he asked for 5. Add one more.
I think you really jump, I mean, it's up to you guys too, obviously, but I think it's red, you've got an original there.
Well, I don't think that's what that language says.
But it says there's an original, right?
No, I think he's
original
asking
stamp.
for original of all copies, so
That one?
I think
Yeah,
so.
What we're looking at here is every 5, all 5 have to have
Yeah.
a stamp on it.
Correct.
And,
I mean, I think there's equal protection if you have one original and then you let them
or photocopies.
photocopy or,
As long as you don't
Run
lose
the
that
ASO
original, so
prints,
you
yeah.
have no record of.
yeah.
But the way it's in there now, and the way it's been going on, I mean, I think there's a little bit in there for interpretation. I mean, the way you've been doing it with that regulation, I'm sure is fine. Do we really need to change the wording to say, spell out one original and the rest can be copies?
Well, if that's what you want, that's what it should say.
Yeah, it should be clear.
So just say a minimum of one original? Something like that? Minimum of one
That would-
original stamp set?
That's how you could probably change it, word if you want to change it.
Let's go with that.
All right, move on.
There you go, man.
Okay.
So John's language, your language for one original, for any submission.
Minimum of one.
And I think just administratively, if we keep that original in the Board of Health file,
Right.
that should be sufficient.
Now, the only, just opposite side, just to play devil's advocate, because these plans are going to go to different boards, and then a lot of times, different boards will be reviewing it, and they'll be asking for revisions and stuff. And again, those revisions could come back with the same copied stamp on it, meaning that the company could just do the revisions and just submit it back to that board, and they wouldn't know if the engineer actually saw it or not. That's what the original stamp, wet ink stamp and signature is. It's to show that any kind of changes or anything on that plan that the engineer or whoever professional might be is agreeing to that revision. And so,
But that would be.
so
a
if
new-
conservation, say for conservation, I always receive the Board of Health with a copied, photocopied stamp, then if they got revisions, would they really know it really came from the engineer, or
Well,
If
the
they're,
engineer
if
about
they're
the
using
revision?
AutoCAD, they're gonna have to produce, and even if there's somebody doing this by hand and leroying it, and say, you're gonna be able to spot the fact that you've got original work on a print.
Yes.
So I think it's,
And usually you get a new set of revisions is going to have a new stamp anyway. You'll have
Yeah.
the block will say the first date, the second date, but the second date will correspond to the new
that's
stamp.
just standard engineering practice. If you revise a drawing, you list it in the list of revisions, and you re-stamp it at
Right.
that point,
Yeah,
so.
so a revision isn't a hybrid revision of some,
not-
old copied material and
Right.
something new. It's gotta be a new plan.
It's
Well,
not
I mean-
clouded by
The new
hand
revision
usually.
date.
well, it's on a screen, and the title block is set up, and so the person goes and makes the revision,
Yeah.
and then makes the print and keeps the old, and just makes the change of the date, and shoots it out, and the stamp's on it.
But that would be submitted to the board, like, say it got submitted to us and we distributed it to Conscom.
That's if it did get submitted to us first. It might just be, because a lot of these boards work independent from each other. We don't know conservation, I'm just picking on that.
I know, but at some point that's going to come to a head. There's going to be a conflict with something, I would imagine at that point.
And I'm looking more for the protection of the designer, because if the designer isn't there and maybe this other person owns a company and they can then save costs on revisions from the engineer, that's how you start cheating.
They'd be really skirting if they're doing that, because one board's you're going to run into an issue if you get an approval from one board based on a plan that doesn't match up with another
We're kind
board.
of stuck with that right now, as a matter of fact, so we know this can happen. So I think the idea that if you make a revision, you create a new original plan and you stamp it.
But that's what Tom's saying, that's
Yeah.
standard practice.
And
anyway.
that should be standard practice, and that's what we're gonna
It is.
require.
Okay.
And then makes 5 copies of that if you wanna send it around.
Okay.
So we're saying we want one original stamp and signature.
Right.
Minimum,
For
minimum.
every
one.
submission,
They
including every
can.
revised submission. I think that's the important piece for this conversation.
But again, yeah, that's typical.
All right, so with those modifications, can you send us around an electronic version of the last and final copy?
Sure, I could do that. But just, okay. So the changes are gonna be few. It's gonna be, dealing with one original copy with copies, and then we'll be dealing with the number of copies of plans required for new construction and repair. And then we're gonna be going back to, page 513 and strike portable for the generator, just heavy generator. And then I believe we are going to change on section 3, specification for system design. We're gonna strike April 30th for maximum groundwater, and we're gonna go to May 1st.
That's the same date. You stick with April 30th if we've already got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll keep April 30th. And from December 1st, we'll strike 1st and put it 15th. Okay, that sounds good. I think that's
So
about
then
it.
John Gloss will know that we were listening. For 2 weeks.
Good, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Next item, review some minutes. We're supposed to remember? Let's see.
You have to remember this one, Tom. You were voted chairman that night.
Next meeting will be scheduled as needed. You did try.
We
times.
did try for a few.
Well, they look good.
Mm-hmm.
So, motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
We go
Minutes.
there? Yeah. Second.
Motion to approve the minutes for
All right,
July
all
1st.
in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. We decided our next meeting is going to be the 24th. And maybe under the any other old and new business, we should talk about the issues surrounding the recent legal activities that have been taking place. Because there was a suit brought against the board by an individual. I don't think there's any reason why we can't say who it is, since this is public record, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Swab Cagliari and Rockwell Realty were the plaintiffs in this one. We were the defendants. This is an action that was taken in front of land court. And it had to do with the fact that we had not issued septic plans, permits based on septic plans for both Zero Valley Street or 27 Pine Street. And the premise for the complaint was that we were basically involved in doing reviews of plans other than septic plans. We were actually looking at stormwater drainage. And the plaintiff was making the argument that no, the Board of Health relinquished that responsibility years ago to the planning board, so why are we singling out them in this particular case to basically go back to what we used to do and be reviewing site plans? Anyway, to kind of cut to the chase, the the land court essentially refused to take any action on this complaint, which doesn't, but they did that without prejudice, which means certainly these folk are entitled, if they wish to go to another court like Superior Court if they want to continue this legal action against us. As far as I can tell, the legal action is got very little basis now that we've actually issued a permit for the septic system. But the only lingering question is that on that permit that we issued, there is a qualifying couple of sentences that reference the need to have spelled out an elevation for a stormwater drainage system on a set of plans. In fact, what it really says is make sure that when you install the system, the elevation of the system is at this value. Well, it turns out, and here's we get to the issue of what generation of plans are we looking at. The planning board has signed site plans which have in them a drawing which has the elevation that we want on the drawing. Now, we never got back from Al or anybody, or do we have?
Yep, I have the plans.
Do they have the number on them?
You do.
All right. And you have a
So-
set of plans as well, Tom?
I do.
So that's all set then.
If I read what this signed in this permit, it just says install stormwater recharge system in front parking lot per plan. Bottom of stone elevation 190, 125. Correct? And it's shown on the plans at 190, 125.
Right.
So it's all set.
It's like a CYA.
Why do you have to make a new permit?
Well, the argument that I'm hearing from town planner is that if we put this on here, then we are essentially saying that the Board of Health is going to be enforcing the building of the stormwater drainage system,
How do you get that?
because it's on our permit.
Right, but it's on the plans.
It's on the plans. Why is this word even here if it's on the plans? Why are these words necessary if they're on the plans?
But Mr.
These
It
words
doesn't
have no
hurt.
value,
It
right?
doesn't hurt.
Well, it does hurt if they're going to take us to court over this and we spend $10,000 in legal fees.
Is that what they're threatening to do?
Yeah.
Take it over that one?
Yeah,
But
you got it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you have a municipal employee speaking for another regulatory office. How could that be? It seems like this action is taking place because the town planner is speaking for the regulatory office of that permit. And I don't think that municipal employee has any regulatory justification to look at the permit and make judgment calls on it.
Well, there's a communication that's taken place between the plaintiff's lawyer and our town planner.
But he has nothing to do with that permit, so I don't understand
No,
why
no,
he's
no, but I'm
speaking
just
for the-
explaining
for the
why this
office.
is continuing as a legal action. And the legal action apparently has to do with a belief anyway that we are, I don't know, this is incorrect, by the way, that we are overstepping our bounds. And of course, we are not. We're making, but the complaint is that we're making some kind of a special case for this particular project, where in recent past, well, how many years it's been, I'm not sure exactly, we have not been doing this kind of review on stormwater drainage. We've been leaving that to the planning board. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it means we have been leaving it to them more often than not. So if this language were not on this page, and everything else that's on this page, and the documents that go with it, move forward, we haven't lost anything, except we've gotten these guys basically off our back. What we're trying to do is unencumber the town from further legal action. And my understanding is if these words weren't here, we would be unencumbered.
Tom, I think if we're going to talk about this to this length, we probably should be in executive session.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what we're protecting or how we're,
There's a little bit more to it, I mean, think.
well, we
discuss
can. I mean,
this.
if we want, we can take a vote now to go to executive session and then the public hearing. But I was,
We can come back out once we go through executive, we don't have to end the hearing, obviously. But we can go into executive session then and talk this over and
oh,
then
no,
come
yeah,
back out.
we have to recess the public meeting.
No, we don't have to close the public hearing, we can come back
No,
out.
recess it. We're not gonna close it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, well, we can do that if you feel it's necessary. But I'm simply saying what I understand to be the case. If we reissued this permit without that qualifying sentence or two, I've been advised this all goes away. And the question for us is taking that sentence or two out of the permit in any way weakening or taking back?
Let's go into executive session and talk about it.
Well, we can,
Yep.
we can.
My suggestion.
All right. Want to vote to do that? I believe we are,
We all have to say it by name.
You have to do a roll call vote.
yeah.
Motion to go into executive session to discuss 0 Valley Street, Pondville Plaza. Jeff Kane, aye.
Cheryl Dunnington, aye.
Okay, Tom Gilbert, aye. So we are back in our public meeting on February 24th, having just come out of executive session.
Not yet, the window hasn't opened up yet.
Well,
Taping. Motion to adjourn.
is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I don't know if she's still, she said all set, but the. Oh, we're on.
Okay. I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.